Hi, guys, and welcome. This is Jen Gaeta Siciliano, artist, memoir writer, bipolar psychiatric survivor, and your host of Not As Crazy As You Think podcast, the place that offers an alternative perspective on mental illness, highlighting creativity, non-conventional healing, and breaking on through to the other side. If you are ready for a new narrative on the mental realm that celebrates crazy and cool without penalty, then Not As Crazy As You Think is for you. Hello, this is Jen Gaeta Siciliano, your host of Not As Crazy As You Think podcast. Today, we have a special guest. His name is Barry Taylor. He's a gelotologist, an accredited laughter therapist, and is the founder of a UK-based organization called Laugh Therapy. He designs bespoke programs, both live and virtually, for business teams, health and social care, charities and support groups, education, and individuals who want to achieve greater well-being and success by exploring the therapeutic effects of humor, play, and laughter. Barry, welcome to the show.
That's a mouthful, isn't it?
I'm so thrilled that you can come forward and talk about this very unique approach to mental health and to well-being. Thank you.
That's great, Jen. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, let me start with saying that I agree with you. I think laughter is like one of the most important things in so many ways that, you know, we can improve just like that general feel-good experience. And it's so easy to access, isn't it?
Yeah, it's non-pharmacological. It's you can't overdose on it, but God, it feels good. So yeah. And you don't realize how many health benefits that there are that come with it. We just think it's just a happy, natural noise that comes out of our mouth when we experience joy. But it does so many things to our body. And, you know, the more I dip into it and research it, the more I realize just how fantastic a thing it is, because it feels great to laugh, but also it's just doing so much good for us.
Yeah, in so many capacities. So before we get into all that, because I really want you to go through all of those benefits, because everybody can benefit from the knowledge that you've accumulated over the course of time with this organization that you have.
It's research, but some of it's workshops, some of it's working with teams, with schools. My background's in education. So it's a bit of everything, really.
So tell us a little bit about your background. What kind of, what makes you the laugh expert?
Well, one thing to point out is whenever I do a workshop, they always say, "Oh, you're the laughter guy. Come on and make me laugh." And I have to say to them, no, go and see a stand-up comedian. I'm not going to make you laugh. I'll facilitate your laughter. I'll create, workshops and activities. But no, my background's in education. Since I left school, I've worked with young people as a youth worker and then went to university. And off the back of that, kind of took my youth work to another level and went into education as a teacher. And it was when I suffered burnout as an educator, I'd just taken on too many roles, that it was a case of having to reevaluate what it is that I am and what it is that I do. So it's interesting being part of a mental health based podcast, because my many reasons for going into this were mental health related as well. But once I'd worked out what it was that I was about and what I was interested in, it kind of took me back to this idea of laughter being the general healer for me in my background growing up, family experiences, and various different problems I'd had in my life. It was always laughter that got me through. And it fascinated me enough at university to explore it in my final dissertation I did about laughter and the history of laughter and humor. So I kind of thought, well, maybe there's something in that. I like working with young people. I like educating. I like laughing, and I see that there's a benefit to it. So kind of found a profession within that I created for myself, which is this. And I didn't realize it had a name, gelotology. I didn't realize that there was an ology that for laughter.
Oh, so it was an existing field before you got into it.
Yeah, there's a scientist, this psychologist called Professor William Fry, and he kind of bulked the trend a little bit. A lot of psychologists, neurologists explore the more darker sides of psychology. And William Fry was fascinated by the mirthful side of how the brain works. And gelotology comes from the root word gelos, and gelos was the ancient Greek personification of laughter. So gelos, and so the word gelotology comes from gelos, not to be confused with gelato, who's the ancient Roman god of creamy, delicious ice cream desserts.
Well, that makes us laugh too, doesn't it?
Yeah, both.
Well, I got to tell you, I find it to be very inspiring because you mentioned that you had your own bout with mental distress and lived experience. And, so many of us can find a lot of inspiration and hope in people who have overcome this and who are now living these empowering lives and helping others. So, I mean, would you be willing to share a little bit about what you went through?
Yeah, I mean, I had quite a challenging upbringing. I mean, I lived in a happy household, but I was the only boy in the house. My dad left when I was about 5 or 6 years of age, and it was quite a challenging breakup. So being the only boy in the house and very similar to my dad, that kind of created a conflict with my mother. So that was quite a challenging upbringing. At the age of 16, 17, I became homeless and was living on the street for a while, and then in and out of social care. And then off the back of that, got myself rehoused, but I'd left school with no qualifications. So it was a case of having to re-educate myself and try and forge some kind of independent life myself, separate from my family. So I'd gone really from leaving school with no qualifications and being homeless to, over the space of about 6 or 7 years, getting qualified, getting into university, and then eventually getting into Cambridge University to study education, and kind of bootstrapping my way through that. And I think the main part within all of that was laughter. I mean, it sounds very twee, but it's that ability to remain positive, to smile through it, and keep going. And I think for perhaps some of your listeners, that sounds a bit far-fetched. And, when people have got problems are real and problems are very individual. But as I've kind of unpicked the things that have happened in my life, I've come to realize that some of the research that I've done into laughter and the therapeutic benefits of it kind of makes sense that I've managed to get myself out of it because of what it does to the brain, what it does to the body, what it does to us emotionally, socially. And so it's allowed me to kind of navigate my way through some of the problems that have been in my life by keeping myself level. And I think a big part of the problems that I had as well was because I had quite a polemic background. I have the peaks and troughs, but also I suffer from type 2 bipolar as well, which explains some of the peaks and troughs that have happened in my life as well. So that's helped keep me level and has allowed me to not get too pulled into the pharmacological side of managing my condition. Although I would say that if you have been prescribed a medication and you need that medication, I certainly wouldn't encourage everybody to just ditch taking that and start laughing, because it's not the wisest thing to do. But I do think that laughter, or a program of laughter by a laughter therapist or laughter yoga or whatever you decide to pursue, works as a really effective complementary therapy, and can unlock some of those chemicals in the brain which perhaps suffering with depression and anxiety, the production of those in the brain are perhaps reduced because of the conditions that we have. So yeah,
it's great because you've really managed to, in your own life, in your own experience, capture something that is available to all of us. This is completely accessible. It's not like you have to, right? I mean, everybody has this ability to laugh.
Yeah,
and
it's infinite.
If we keep it in mind, right, that there are real physiological and emotional benefits, why don't we get into that a little bit? Because, this is science. It's not like, let's just feel good and, talk people into this.
Yeah.
This is really actually what's happening in our bodies physically when we are laughing. So how are these things occurring?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm doing a workshop, there's the initial 5-10 minute resistance that you often get, where people are thinking, okay, this is going to be quite happy clappy. I don't think you're really in touch with what's really going on in my life. I did a workshop fairly recently with a group of social workers, and I was advised beforehand that they might be quite challenging. And as soon as I got there, the response was, come on then, make me laugh, And I think that it takes a while for people to drop their guard a little bit and allow you to do some of the work that might help them unlock the chemicals that will make them feel better. I mean, one statistic that I found when I first got into this was that although that we can hear when someone's fake laughing, and we can identify, kind of fake laugh straight away, our brain can't tell when we're fake laughing, and so it responds in exactly the same way as if we were mirthfully laughing. So what happens when we laugh is the chemicals that we produce when we're anxious and when we're stressed, so it's mainly cortisol, epinephrine, which is adrenaline, that make us tense, and that fight or flight kind of response. When we laugh, those receptors lock off. And simultaneously, what opens up are the release of and the activation of positive endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, melatonin, oxytocin, all of these fantastic chemicals that make us feel safe, lift our mood, make us relax. It produces gamma waves, which are the same responses that are released when we meditate, that makes us feel calm, alert, creative, problem solving. And laughter does that as well. And so, some of this stuff, you have to take some quite strong drugs to get that experience, but we've got that infinitely within us. And it's only after lots and lots of research, we're starting to see just how many things that laughter can not solve, but dissolve, that can, that can allow us to, even if for a short space of time, reduce that so that we can maybe wrestle back a little bit of control over the situations we find ourselves in, and to see things from a safe enough distance where we can allow ourselves a little bit of perspective. Some problems that we have are very, very real, but the ability to detach ourselves, look at them, and maybe even laugh at them wrestles back a little bit of control for us and allows us to perhaps manage them a little bit better than if we're in an anxious state and we start spiraling, as often people can find themselves in. It's very difficult to stop that downward spiral and kind of get some stability. And the ability to laugh with people, or even as I say, just laugh on your own. Your brain doesn't know if you're fake laughing and does the same thing. Just lock yourself in the toilet and fake laugh. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but it will calm you down. It will slow your heart rate down, and it will stop releasing some of those stress chemicals and allow yourself a little bit of perspective. And if you can slow your breathing down, if you can slow your heart rate down, if you can stop yourself feeling tense and anxious, you're already a little bit further along the line to solving some of your problems, or at least addressing them.
Right. It's amazing how effective something like this is. I mean, I say it, it's like, listen, when we're feeling good and laughter comes easily and naturally, right? We know the power of it, but it is hard for a lot of people who are going through really severe mental distress. And, if they're in the troughs of depression, and I'm sure that you experience like some pushback from people who are just like, well, it's not that easy to get there. How I know that you have this, you push the idea of fake it until you make it, and it seems like really, if you keep that in mind, it's more of a technique than, you don't have to convince yourself of this really quickly, but you could just try it out and use it in your tool chest for strategies.
It's a challenge for people, I think, because it's unusual. I mean, anybody that's been to a laughter yoga session, laughter yoga was something that was started by a physician in India, in Mumbai, called Dr. Madan Kataria. Anybody that's been to one of those sessions, which combines breathing yoga, stretching, and laughing for no reason other than that it's providing us benefit, those first 10 minutes can feel a little bit self-conscious, a little bit odd, for the simple reason you're laughing for no reason, and that's alien to us. If we laugh, it's normally because somebody's said something humorous or tickled us or whatever it is that's provoked that laughter. So I think the resistance comes from the fact that, this is going to solve my problem because I'm just fake laughing. Well, firstly, it won't solve your problems, but it might put you in a state where you might be able to manage them a little bit better. But it's about releasing the chemicals that are going to allow yourself to be calmer, take yourself temporarily or lessen the state that you were in the same way as A psychiatrist might ask you to think about using CBT techniques, cognitive behavioral therapy, breathing techniques, like you might, if you're having a panic attack, slowing your breathing down, meditating. All of these are techniques that we've become more familiar with and have become more accepting ways of managing stress, anxiety, and depression. And laughter is one that we know it makes us feel better. We know that if we're low, whether that's because we have depression or anxiety or just because we're feeling down, we know that being around people that make us laugh will lift us up. So the concept of laughter making us feel better is not an alien one. It's the thought of using it as a complementary therapy is quite alien to us and quite new. But the more we try it, the more one of the things I get people to do when I'm running a workshop is to try and identify what it is that are your laughter triggers. What's your sense of humor? Because if I went into a room and said, right, I'm going to make you laugh for an hour, I guarantee that there's going to be a large number of people that it just won't land with, because everybody's got their own unique sense of humor. Right. So it's very difficult to make someone laugh. And if we go and watch a stand-up comedian, we choose who we go to see. And if it's an open mic night, some of them will make us laugh, some won't, because we've all got our own taste. So trying to make people laugh is perhaps not the way, but getting people to understand their own sense of humor, what makes them laugh, and then creating their own laughter bank, something that they pay into, make deposits into and save for a rainy day where they can spend, is a really good way of thinking about how you can leverage the power of laughter to make you feel better on those days when you don't feel so good. So is it memes? Is it viral videos? Is it jokes, joke books? Is it magazines, comics, stand-up comedians? Whatever it is that makes you laugh, have those things to hand. Have things on your desk at work that, squeaky toys or whatever it is that tickles you when you're feeling low, because sometimes you can just look at a photograph or, talk to someone who will lift you and make you laugh, and you'll feel better straight away. And so having those things readily around you, I think, is really important as well. Yeah. Because we can't always access it when we need it. That's the thing. If you're at home and you're on your own and you don't have people around you, it's very hard to just start laughing. Sure. But if you've got something saved on the TiVo that you can just watch, or you've got some jokes saved on your phone that someone told you, I'll save that one. That helps. It's the trigger that will get you started.
Yeah, I love that. It's like putting things in your tool chest, knowing how and when to pull. I think it's great. Now, I know that some of your background, at least, was when you started out, you were doing a lot of seminars with businesses, right? You were helping other people, particularly in the mental health industry, but they weren't necessarily patients.
No, I remember one of the first ones that I did after the pandemic kind of slowed. It's not gone away, but it's slowed down, and people were starting to kind of go out and do some of the things that they were doing before. I was contacted by a hospice palliative care, and they said that we've got 3 hospices. We're really interested in what you do. We think it might be really beneficial. Would you be interested in doing a workshop? I said, yeah, wow, that'd be really good. That made me feel really good. We've booked a venue, and I thought, you've booked a venue to bring these people to? I thought, is that wise? So immediately I'm on the phone to my insurers and saying, am I covered for this? What's going to happen if someone laughs and then just dies? Anyway, I prepared this workshop with patients in mind, and got there, and it was all the workers that they had such a hellish time during the pandemic, what with the patients not being able to be visited, and the pandemic hitting some of the hospices as well, and people dying earlier than was expected. They had a really horrible time. They needed just something to lift mood, to boost their morale. And I've had quite a lot of that, particularly in the healthcare. When I've been asked to do a workshop for healthcare, 90% of the time it's for the staff who, in this country, in the UK, work incredibly hard and are hugely under-resourced and underappreciated, not by the general public. I mean, we're very lucky to have a healthcare system in the UK that's free at the point of entry. And we know that we're very lucky. But it comes at a cost to the people who give their time to what is a vocation. They don't do it for the money. So they find it particularly tough. So it's interesting. I didn't expect to get asked to do workshops within healthcare, did expect social care. But that when I first started doing this, there was that thing, that imposter syndrome that comes where you think, well, I'm not a doctor of anything. You know, this is something that I've researched and I've created, but I've not got an official master's degree that I've paid tens of thousands of pounds for to get, you know, this piece of paper that says I can do this. And so you expect there to be a resistance. And actually, I think they value the fact that someone's trying to address their mental health needs, where they're constantly having to devote their time to other people. No one's actually necessarily considering them. So they really buy into it. Businesses, it's slower to get those involved because when I work with a business, I'm quite insistent that it starts at the top, that leadership are involved. And if a lot of problems often stem from hierarchical issues, the them and us kind of thing, where employees perhaps don't see the leadership teams as human. It's just you're the boss. And anybody who's a manager, I mean, my wife's a manager of a big retail store. She always says, I feel completely out of it because they don't realize that I care as well, and you know the job matters to me, and I have my own challenges. So I always insist that leadership and management are involved in and are seen to be involved with it, so that that's a good starting point. Understanding each other is a really key part of laughing together. It builds trust. But the problem you often find with businesses, particularly larger businesses where they time your toilet breaks, that the idea of investing in a people-centered approach to the workplace is not something they necessarily want to devote their money to. But businesses who are perhaps small to medium, who really, it's important to them that they retain the best talent and attract the best talent as well, and keeping stress levels low, they buy into it. And that's a different approach. Rather than it being necessarily therapeutic, I'll work with them on things like, there was a really nice phrase called neuroarchitecture. And it was the idea of thinking about the interior of a workspace and what that does for our brain and how that relaxes us or makes us connect or makes us happy. If you're in a dull, dark grey office, you're going to feel pretty low. But if the people that you're working with, there was one workshop that I did with a call center, and we were exploring this idea of the fact that when you're in a call center, you've got the cans on and you're talking, and the person on the other end of the phone can't see you. So exploring that idea of you could make your workplace happier and nobody will know that you're doing this. So we were getting props out and hats and red noses and all this kind of thing. Just to kind of have that moment where you could look across the call center and smile because someone's got, a silly hat on or something. But the customer on the other end of the phone knows nothing other than the fact that perhaps you sound a little bit brighter when you're talking to them. Things like that is really, I enjoy exploring that, because all of my workshops are bespoke. There's no kind of fits-all thing. You have to understand who you're working with, what their needs are, and then model something around that. So yeah, healthcare, business are very different, and schools are another that's completely different as well, because there's a lot of evidence now to suggest that that laughter can aid the attainment as well as the engagement for young people as well. We know that if a classroom is filled with laughter and the content is fun and enjoyable, kids will get involved with it more. Yeah. But there's a lot of evidence to show that when they're laughing and enjoying it, they remember more. Their short-term memory is stronger. And when they go into exams, they perform better in exams as well, because the prefrontal cortex that deals with emotions, but which deal with anxiety and stress, also deals with short-term memory as well. They're kind of next door neighbors. So if you go into an exam and you're anxious and you're stressed, the ability to pull that content which you need to access for that two-hour period in an exam, that shuts down. It's that kind of thing that nervous actors experience when they walk on stage and they just throw a blank and they can't remember their lines. It's all anxiety and stress related. So there's a lot of research that's gone into creating 2 trial groups, one which you were involved in a laughter program in the lead up to an exam, and one that just prepared and revised normally. And the group that watched funny videos, took part in some laughter yoga, etc., before an exam performed 10 to 15% higher in in their exams than those that just prepared normally and doggedly researched. So there's loads of evidence in education now that there might be a place for laughter. And of course, you need to work with the teachers then, because not every teacher is funny or thinks that they can be funny. So it's how do you turn their content, which could be quite dull, into something that's engaging for young people. So you do work with them as well. Yeah. So there's just loads of ways that I can access this. It's broad.
It's so broad, and it's so like all encompassing. There's so many areas that if they know these principles and they get this understanding, it could, aid in so many different ways.
Yeah.
I love it. I also, so much of what you do has that theatrical approach as well, because I understand that you have a background in theater, right? That was one of the things that you taught.
Yeah. I mean, I did a drama performing arts A-level from 16 to 18 years of age. Mm-hmm. And then off the back of that, joined youth theatre groups, performed at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, directed some pieces, took those on tour, did some stuff abroad, and then got involved with the theatre and education group. So we were going around schools performing books and plays that were on the curriculum, and then did workshops off the back of that. So the idea of play, of workshops, of performance, kind of again was one of those things that links in with what I'm now doing.
Yeah.
And then when I went into education as an extension of that, I became a drama teacher as well. So I taught performing arts, but I never really had any desire, other than when I was a theatre and education performer, of actually being an actor. The idea of standing on stage, I found quite challenging. I like the idea of being somebody else, and that perhaps taps into some of my problems as a child and as a young person. The idea of escaping was engaging, but the idea of standing there on stage and getting adulation, I struggled with that a little bit. It made it harder for me to hide. So I do, if it's a big venue and there's a lot of people there, it can be a little bit worrying when you're not playing a character and you're just being yourself. That can be a challenge at times. So I have to kind of switch on you're Barry, the laughter therapy guy, rather than I'm just me. But yeah, so I guess a little bit of the performance element feeds into some of the tools that I use. So I use things like improv, theatre-based games, some of the stuff that I would do in the classroom that I knew worked. And I think it's not just laughter and humor, it's the idea of play that I think is really key to releasing some of these chemicals and getting us laughing and relaxing, because we're hardwired to play from the minute that we're born. We're given toys. There's someone over our pram or our cot kind of pulling funny faces. Everything kind of through our childhood is centered around play and toys and games. And then we kind of go into the workplace, we become adults, and that lessens, and we forget to play. And I don't think we want to stop playing. I think we've got this thing in our heads where we think that if we're playing, we're goofing off, that we're not taking life seriously. But we still want to play because we have pets and we play with the pets and we play with our children, our grandchildren. We want to do it, but I think we feel a little self-conscious about allowing ourselves to do that. So it's really important that when I do a workshop, I create an atmosphere, as I used to do in the drama classroom as well, for kids who were doing drama because it was on their timetable but didn't necessarily want to be there. That you create a safe atmosphere where you say, look, this is what we're going to do for the next hour, and no one's going to judge us. It's completely safe. And we're going to allow the child within us to come out for an hour, which was a phrase I used at a healthcare workshop recently, and it was for nurses and midwives. And I said, right, for the next hour, we're going to allow that child within you to come out. And of course, there was some tittering at the back of the room. And somebody piped up, that's what I do for a living already, because they were midwives. And the idea of just getting that child within you out was something that,
right.
And I didn't realize that I'd literally said that. But it's in essence, it's what it is. It's trying to tap into that part of ourselves that we've forgotten to be. And I think it's really important. It's play is really an important tool for problem solving, for creativity, for connecting with others, building trust, as well as leading to laughter and happiness and joy and mirth as well.
Yeah.
So we've got to learn to play a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much of our Western advanced society is heavy with responsibility, adulting, like meeting all of our goals. It's so easy to let go of the things that we know we loved most as a kid, that sense of play, that sense of, childlike embracing, of things that are lighthearted and uplifting. It's such an important practice, really, isn't it? I mean, this is like something that might not be easy for many of us, even those who listen. Most people like to laugh.
Yeah,
I love to laugh, but like I said, in times, and I do want to stress this, just for those who feel like so under the spell of sadness, depression, whatever it is, anxiety, right? That they're just, it's easy to not believe in it as much as they would like to. Yeah. However, anything that's done as a practice, you become better at it. It's what I tell my students, It's like if you practice it, it doesn't, it may feel hard at first, but then it's just something that you don't have to think about as much. You can access it with a little bit more ease, and it becomes part of, your system of coping, or developing, whatever you're doing.
Absolutely.
But I think that this is a practice that anybody can definitely, start incorporating, like literally today.
Yeah. I mean, it's important when I meet a group to point out I'm not some kind of yogi or swami that's going to say to you, you do this, everything's going to be great, because it isn't. I got it this morning. I had a stress, everybody has problems. Yesterday was not a particularly good day. So this happens, life happens to people. Right. So to the idea of, if we laugh, it's all going to go away, and hey, my life's great now because I'm a laughter therapist. It really isn't. But it's that idea of constantly reminding yourself that you need to keep your head in a space where you can cope with life. Yeah. We can't always do that. But if there are tools that will help us, it's important to keep going back to those tools and trying those. Now, whether that's calming our breathing down or removing ourselves from the stressor, whether it's meditation or yoga or whatever it is that we do to kind of calm ourselves down, laughter is just another tool. And it's a tool that perhaps we've never considered as much as we perhaps more recently do, as a tool that can provide us with those same therapeutic benefits that some of these other more traditional approaches do. So we're not always in the mood to laugh. We're not always able to access laughter. But the fact that scientifically, even if you don't feel like laughing and you laugh, you just laugh for no reason, you are actually doing something to your brain and your body, which is reducing some of that stress, which is reducing some of that tension. It's slowing your heart, slowing your breathing, oxygenating your brain and your body, working your obliques, and there's so many benefits, as well as socially as well. I mean, sometimes you get people at work who are, I call them mood hoovers, the ones that just suck, like Dementors in Harry Potter. They just suck all of the life out of the room. You get those, and it's corrosive. You can have a toxic environment because someone there is constantly negative. Yeah. If you're not feeling it, even if you can put it out and it's not necessarily genuine, and these people can actually annoy just as much, the ones that are positive, even though you know that their lives are terrible. But if you're putting it out, it can have the same corrosive effect or the same contagious effect. And I think it's really important that if you are going to be contagious, make sure it's something worth catching, because we've had a lot of contagion over the past couple of years. And having someone around who's if you hear laughter in the workplace, I always say go to it, find out what they're laughing about. You can walk into a room when someone's laughing, and even if you don't know what they're laughing about, it can get you laughing as well. It has that contagious, a bit like a yawn. Someone starts yawning, everybody starts yawning. Laughter can do that as well. So again, if you're not feeling it, if you don't feel like laughing, try and put yourself in an environment where you're hearing laughter so you can absorb some of it as well. Because just the thought of laughing can have, can release some of those chemicals as well. Oxytocin is one of those. It's the chemical that that mothers release when they're breastfeeding their babies. It's the chemical that makes us feel safe and secure. Hugs allow us to release oxytocin. So, if it's no coincidence that when someone's feeling low and you give them a hug, it makes them feel a bit better because it's producing oxytocin. It's why we wrap a baby up tight, so it has that feeling that it's being held, because it will make the baby feel calmer. Laughter releases oxytocin as well. Giving to charity, doing a charitable act, can release oxytocin. When you do something good for somebody else, it makes you feel good as well, because it has that same effect. Well, laughter does that as well. So being around laughter, or trying to make someone laugh, or think comedically, if that's possible as well, will release that same chemical that's going to make you feel a little bit safer, a little bit more secure. And even if it's only a small amount, it's better than it was before when you weren't doing it. So
exactly. And you mentioned babies, because I always think it's such a contagious thing. Like, you could just, because babies will just laugh for no reason. We have no idea why they're laughing half the times, right? But it's so great to, even if you are, on a subway or something, you see a baby, it's so easy to just start laughing because the baby's laughing. It's like we should just carry around these little fake babies that are just filled with laughter, because it is a trigger, and it does. You walk away thinking wow, that's the miracle of life, right? We and that's the reminder that it can be found in the simplest of things. Like, pets can make us laugh too, just by being silly and doing something odd, or sitting in a funny way. You know what I mean? So it's really, it's such an interesting dynamic to explore. And I think that the few times that we have spoken, I do get very inspired by this, because, I do a lot of writing, and it's satire. A lot of it's satire. So, that's scary a little bit, because satire can also insult.
But what I like satire, and what I like about satire is punching up. And that's the important thing. Punch up, don't punch down. The beauty, what separates satire and parody. Parody is you're making fun of somebody, the way they walk, the way they talk, whatever. Satire, you're aiming for the person in authority, the person that deserves it. So I have no problem with satire, because it's punching up. Don't punch the person down, punch up.
That's right. But it's interesting, because I think as I write, and as I'm trying to get this work out there right now, and it's just, I say to myself, I think that some people who are, in charge, say, of whatever, publishing, whatever, they might get offended. But I know, essentially, by, using that as a technique, what I'm really trying to do is lessen the sadness associated with, what those, say, authority figures are doing, and making it more of a social statement. But it's really, I feel like I could only get there through laughing. Like, if I tell my personal story as just oh, this is sad me, it's not going to have the same effect as if I inject this humor into it.
It's building a connection with someone as well. It's building humor, and laughter builds trust. It builds connection. It builds understanding. You can have two people who hate each other, but you watch them when they find something to laugh about. When that moment breaks and the laughter starts, that's when the healing and the understanding starts. So sometimes you may be it may come from a position of anger. It may feel quite attacking, but whilst you may be attacking a certain person or a certain thing, you may simultaneously allowing other people to connect with you, to understand, to feel less alone with that. I think, oh, there's somebody else who's experiencing this. And so building trust and building connection is really important. Laughter is a great tool for dealing with conflict. And that's a really good one for in the workplace environment, if I'm doing a workshop there as well. And it's kind of the one that works with employers and employees. It's breaking down the idea of conflict and building trust and understanding and communication. So eye contact plays a particularly strong part in that as well. When you make eye contact with someone, you're making a connection. And I always say start with a smile is really good as well. So if you see someone smile, that's often the good starting point, because you're making a connection with that person, and a laugh really is just a smile that bursts. And if you can get people smiling first, or you receive a smile back, that can lift you. And it's often the starting point then for a conversation, for a bit of banter, a bit of laughter, and it all snowballs from there. But yeah, whatever your taste in humor is, providing it's not hurtful to the person, it's okay to explore a topic. There's some very risque comedians who deal with some really challenging material, and I always think that's okay, providing you're not laughing at the victim of that, specifically at the victim. Because sometimes, I did a workshop with some cancer patients, and they said that since they've been diagnosed, particularly those that had a terminal diagnosis, that people were scared to laugh around them anymore, if it was in some way inappropriate. And they missed that, because what they needed at that moment in their life was laughter, humor, and normality.
Yes.
And so for them, laughing at the thing that they got, even though it wasn't funny, wrestled back a little bit of control for them, because they were laughing at the thing rather than laughing at another victim of cancer. And I think you can apply that to most conditions, most traumatic or stressful things. If you can find the ability to laugh at the thing, it does empower you, I think. So yeah, again, if you're somebody who think, well, it's easy for you to say, I can't laugh at the thing I've got because I've experienced this. You probably can't. But if you can find a way to find an aspect of it to laugh at, you'd be surprised at how much you've gained a little bit more empowerment from that, because you've allowed it to stop controlling you, and that you're now a little bit more in control of it. So yeah,
absolutely. I find that to be all very empowering for me personally. This is what I need to hear right now, because I just got rejected again from another publisher, so it's annoying.
Laugh at them.
Yeah, let me laugh.
I don't need you. I'm too good for you.
Now, you've done a lot of things in the UK, but have you dabbled in this kind of therapy in other countries? Have they been receptive? I know that you do mostly in-person things, but you've also done Zoom, virtual stuff.
Yeah, a little bit. Not massively.
Yeah, and what's the difference with the Zoom, like a virtual environment? Is it possibly, a little more challenging because of what humor is strange like that, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to before, this idea of making a human connection with someone, the eye contact, the being in the same space as the laughter. It does make it more challenging, the Zoom thing. And it was something that I did consider, is it possible to do that? Because obviously I can connect with more people then. At the moment, most of the work that I had was organic, and it was within a 50-mile radius of where I'm based. But this idea of there's a massive world out there, and wouldn't it be great to explore laughter in other cultures? Because it's a universal language. We all laugh and we all find things funny, and it crosses language barriers. But how do you do that on a screen? And it's quite a different ball game, because often in a Zoom situation, you're in your space, I'm in my space, all of those windows are people in their space. So that does make it challenging, because particularly if a lot of my workshop activities are based around games and being in the same space and close proximity. So you have to rethink everything. So yeah, it does bring the tools that I have down to about 10 to 15%, but I'm constantly looking for a big part of my research is not just about what laughter can do to the mind and the body, but also the exercises, the tools, the games, the strategies that will allow that to happen. So I'm always looking for games. I'm constantly buying books on anything to do with virtual meetings to make them more engaging. Any tools that I can find that think, oh, that's an activity that might allow that to happen. So any of the workshops I've had so far tend to be, there've been a few where it's been windows of people in their spaces where they've been working remotely. But often if it's someone or an organization that's based quite a distance from me, I say, can you get everybody in the same space? Put a screen up. Let's
nice.
and try and get everybody together to do that remotely.
Yeah.
It works so much better. I mean, it can be difficult to control because there'll be things going on and you're like, hey, hi, back over here, But yeah, I want to do more of that. And it's one of the main reasons why we connected via LinkedIn was for exactly that reason. Was a lot of the work that I was doing was organic and was local. And I thought I need to connect with people abroad. So the idea was to go onto social media and to build some business to business contacts, business leads. And within a day or two, I thought this is silly. I need to find my tribe, my group of people. So I thought I need to find out what other people are doing, how they do it, whether there's a market for this, etc. So I've just gone round really for the past month or two, just contacting people who do anything vaguely within my arena to say, listen, how are you doing this? This is what I do. These are the things I do. How do you do it? Just to understand them, their approaches, to understand the different industries that they work within, to help me improve and hopefully to share some things that will help them improve. And as time goes on, I hope that I'll be able to make more business contacts where people think, you know what, this actually might be quite good as a lunchtime laughter session. You know, people there with their sandwiches and their bento boxes, and let's stick Zoom on and we'll do something fun over lunch. And I've had a few of those in the UK, and I can see that that's so easy to replicate in other cultures. And will be fascinating to do, actually. Be interesting to see how Canada, America, Australia, New Zealand, different kind of English-speaking countries actually differ in the way that they approach laughter and what makes them laugh, how they connect. I mean, that's going to be a fascinating social experiment.
I know. I think it would be. And, you know, it is interesting because culturally we have so much in common, all of those countries that you mentioned. Yeah. But we also, you know, we come from our own set of references.
Yeah.
So what, you know, I find hilarious might just be like, oh, I don't really get it. In another realm, right? But there are so many overlaps as well. So it would be fun for you, I think, to, you know, go in that direction. I know personally, American can use more of this because right now we are stressed out of our minds over here. We need more laughter. We need more, you know, senses of humor. Like everybody's getting like super serious. And you know, I do believe that, you know, COVID created a world of, you know, listen, the world changed, you know, in so many ways. I mean, we are continually trying to adapt. I think that a lot of mental health issues came to the forefront with the experience of it. So to know that you would be possibly interested in doing things, you know, virtually for Americans, America, listen up because you know this
let's
is
have
an
a lunch
option
on lunch.
For the lunch.
Let's have a laugh on lunchtime. Yeah,
yes, I love that idea, and I also like the idea of like everyone getting together in one location. I saw there was a person I follow in artificial intelligence, and he wanted to, you know, speak to a seminar room. And rather than, again, everyone plugging into one computer, their own computer individually and coming up with a bunch of windows, they were all in like a classroom setting, you know, so that they could kind of engage with each other. And then that person who was the facilitator could, you know, be able to at least witness that. So that is an option.
Yeah, because in the workplace, you tend to have cliques. I mean, when I first started in teaching, it's fascinating. If you go into a staff room, you can tell who works in which department
You're
based on
right.
where they're sat.
Yeah.
The PE department are all sat together, the languages department are sat together, and breaking that down, that cross-departmental click, I think laughter's a great way of doing that. It allows you to build relationships which can only make the business stronger and more productive if people have an understanding cross-departmentally. But the idea of, Judy from Reprographics laughing with Frank from accounts might be a challenge for those first 5 or 10 minutes. But, get to the end of the half hour, 45 minutes. It'd be interesting to see what happens after that, whether they talk at the water cooler the following day or, it can only be beneficial, I would hope. You don't want a situation where people are leaving because she laughed at me. But I think it is the idea of building relationships, understanding, trust between people is really important. It's not just the mental, physical, and emotional stuff, but it's the sociological impact that laughter has is really important.
Absolutely. It breaks down barriers. It's
absolutely.
like, we have more in common. We can, share this unique perspective. And it's so funny because laughter really, or just humor in general, like it really helps you look at things kind of like off, like an offbeat way, right? Yeah. It's not so literal, and it's like you're thinking about things in a sense that isn't the way we normally think about things, right? It's just and in that, again, practicing that is a great, I think, strategy for the mental health arena, because a lot of the times what happens with mental distress, I hate to say illness, but mental distress is, we ruminate over certain things over and over. And it's like sometimes when you inject something that's humorous or funny, it kind of throws you off that rail, and puts you on another path, and where you have to like kind of, oh, okay, well, let me look at this again. And it's such a good way to reset.
Yeah. Reset's a good word for that. I mean, I don't like to simplify mental health challenges, but the one way that I try to differentiate between depression and anxiety with people. I mean, I suffer from depression. My wife suffers with anxiety. And I always say that depression is often looking back and being impacted by things. Anxiety is worrying about what's to come. And what I find laughter does is it centers you. It's very much keeps you in the present in the same way as yoga or meditation or whatever it is might do as well. It's very hard to look back on problems or look forwards to potential concerns if you're very much laughing in the moment with somebody else. It's hard to keep your attention on those things when you're looking there.
Yes.
So I think, and there are other things that do that, but yeah, I think it's a good way of switching off from the distractions of real life that are causing us problems. If you're engaging one-on-one or one with a group and laughing and finding something humorous to provoke that laughter. And if you can't find something humorous to provoke that laughter, then explore other strategies to do that, which is what I go into workplaces and so on to explore. What are those strategies that you can do to create more laughter if you can't think of them yourself?
If somebody wanted to sort of try this today, okay, and they don't have access to your programs or right now, or whatever, they just want to start playing around with this idea, like what would be a short kind of strategy, like prompt that you could possibly give them to work on tonight?
I'd say sit down and work out what makes you laugh. What are your triggers? Understand what your humor is, and creating, like I said before, creating that laughter bank. Once you know what are the things that make you laugh, find the things around you that will help you to access that laughter if you don't feel like laughing. If you don't have those things around you, if you can't think, I don't know what makes me laugh, I'm just not in that mindset, When you go to the toilet and you flush the toilet afterwards, laugh until that toilet is quiet. Wash your hands, laugh until the water goes off and you've dried your hands. It's as ridiculous as it sounds. What you've done in that 30 seconds, 40 seconds has got your heart racing, oxygenated your body, released some chemicals in your brain. But after that heart's racing, the calm down afterwards will create a serenity, which isn't going to take away your problems, but it is going to calm you down for a short amount of time. That's always a good starting point. Go for a walk. I mean, people say, well, reconnect with nature. It's there's truth in it. Go for a walk. Try and make eye contact with someone and smile. Them smiling back will make you feel a little bit more human as well. That's a good start. Start with a smile and work up from there. And if, as I said before, and it sounds awful to say it, but if you can't find it, fake it to make it. Laugh for no reason whatsoever. If you're still struggling, get on YouTube and look for laughter yoga or something like that, and do a session over YouTube with someone. That's a good point, the starting point as well. Find toys, videos, books, anything at all which will help that as well. We've all got somebody that makes us laugh. It may be friends, it may be a family member. That's a good starting point. Ring them up, go and visit them. You'd be surprised how, within half an hour, you might not start laughing. And when you leave there, feel better than when you arrived. Yeah. Be around kids. Kids are a great source of laughter, as we talked about before. Don't hang around school gates. You'll get arrested. That's not, I wouldn't say hang around kids to that extent. But if you've got someone who's got kids, go and pay them a visit. Say, I'm going to pop over and see you, because kids are a great source for conversation. Something that a kid does in the room will normally provoke that, and the laughter then comes from the thing that the kid's doing, which you'd love to join in if you were 10, 20, 30 years younger, but feel self-conscious about doing it. Any of those things are a really good starting point.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. You have so many good things on your website, and I want you to give the audience your website, because there's a lot of good information in terms of studies, a lot of real good evidence-based research that can support all of the different effects: psychological, social, emotional, spiritual. I love how it's so thorough, and it really gives such a great guideline for people who kind of want to review with this, because, this isn't just woo-woo stuff. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, I know whenever we talk about alternatives to, say, a traditional course of action for treating mental illness, it seems to be like, people aren't sure if it's kind of a personal thing of a kind of a on the fringe therapist, or is it really sustainable? And it is. So I would love for you to just give them your website, and also please let them know how they can follow you on your social media platform.
Yeah. So my website is Laugh Therapy, all one word, laughtherapy.lol, LOL, laugh out loud.
Perfect.
Not 101, because a lot of people really see it as a 101. So it's laughtherapy.lol. There's a contact thing on there. You can contact me if you're interested in doing anything like this, or just you want to know a little bit more about it. I can set up a 30-minute Zoom call and we can talk about it. There's research on there. I'm constantly updating it. There's pages there that are not visible at the moment that I'm constantly working on when I've got a little bit of time. So it will propagate more. I'm also on LinkedIn as well. That's the one that I'm most active on. So you can find me on there, Barry-Taylor-Laugh-Therapy. You can find me on there as well. And when I get the time, I'll put something on there that might provoke some ideas as well. But yeah, I get what you're saying, and I get what some listeners will be thinking. Oh, this is a bit cuckoo, I get it. The idea of sticking a candle in my ear or a hot rock on my head seems odd to me, but I'm sure that there's some science behind it that suggests that it might be beneficial. But certainly you've not got to dig for too long in books or on the internet to find the physical, mental, emotional benefits that laughter has, and the research and the studies to support that as well. And I think we all know that laughter makes us feel better. And and that stress makes us feel worse. And the evidence is there to show that laughter reduces stress and improves mood. So it's just really, after that, it's just a case of, how do I do that then? Because I'm not really in the mood to laugh. So that's where the finding the strategies comes into play.
But, it's so great that you're doing this because, to focus on something so specific that is so beneficial, and yet, and it's so easy to access, and yet people need to be reminded of this. It's showing me that why we go astray sometimes. I mean, a lot of these things come up and we don't expect it. Mental distress or mental illness can develop in everybody's lives in so many different ways for so many different reasons. And to just know that there's kind of like an internal regulating system that we could access. I think it's so important to stress that because people forget. I remember when I first suffered from, my first bout with, I like to call it shamanic dismemberment rather than psychosis. So that was like a big thing for me in my early 20s, because I had this near-death experience and it was just like overwhelming. It took over my life. And I remember feeling so down and depressed. And because I was in this situation where I was on very, very heavy drugs, and I was just like kind of sitting around my house, and friends would come over, and I didn't even like want them to be there because they were so sad for me. Like they pitied me, and it was like, wait, we used to laugh. We used to laugh and have fun and joke, and like that was missing, So I think that, as you say, it's we have to be careful with how we discuss the sensitive topic of mental distress, because everybody's issues are different and to different degrees, and for different, for some very profoundly difficult times in their lives, they suffer these things. But it's just so important to remember that we are all human and we all share this base of self-repair in a way. And, it is something that it can be revisited, even if you forget how great it is to laugh sometimes. It's something that's just sitting there that if you can figure out a way to access it, even if it's faking it, even if it's, just beginning with a smile. I love all those reminders because, it could then turn into much more. And there's so much on the other side of that. So by taking this on, forget the imposter syndrome. You're doing it. Okay. I mean, it's like you are the expert, according the way I see it, because, who else is doing this kind of thing? Not too many people are out there delivering this message in the way that you are. So I thank you for all your work. And is there anything else that you would like to say and share with the audience that continues to deliver your message on home?
Laughter's not a panacea. It's not a cure-all. And I really can't stress that enough. Coming on and saying, you know what, laugh, fake it to make it, you'll feel better. It won't solve your problem. It won't solve your problem, but it'll put your mind in a slightly better headspace to try and manage that problem. It'll release chemicals which will lessen the stress and anxiety that's making that problem harder to deal with, or is the problem. And it's at the same time releasing chemicals which is calming you down. It's raising your mood and allowing you to relinquish a little bit more control. So whether it's PTSD, whether it's grief, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, it is not going to take that away. But often that requires a lot more work. But what laughter can do is to put you in a slightly better frame of mind to be able to start to unpick those problems. So I think the thing that I would leave you with is this isn't going to, I'm no way professing that this is going to solve everything. And I hate to feel quite didactic and say, you know what, we've just got to laugh more. But sometimes we do need to be reminded of the simple things, because when you're in a traumatic experience, like I said before with education, when you're stressed and anxious, you can't think straight.
Right.
It's difficult to have that clarity of thought. So sometimes just being guided towards the simple things, which we've forgotten amongst the plethora of other things that we're having to deal with at the moment. Sometimes the solution is within the simplest of things. And as I say, it's not solving it, but it will help to temporarily dissolve it. And it's really important to think of laughter like that it's yes. not a cure-all, but is a tool that you can use to help you get a little bit more clarity.
Absolutely. Barry, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for giving us all of this unique and really inspiring wisdom. I appreciate you, coming aboard and sharing this insight. I think it's going to benefit many, many listeners. Thank you.
That's great. It's great to speak on your podcast. I think it's fantastic. And I think you speak to a lot of people who really appreciate what you're sharing, because it's important sometimes to just hear somebody else sharing something that you might be going through and you might be feeling completely alone with. So, I think it's fantastic to be able to speak on this podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. If you would like to learn more about the therapeutic benefits of laughter, or are interested in a virtual workshop for your workplace, group, or just personally, visit www.laughtherapy.lol, or you can email direct at info@laughtherapy.lol, where Barry will respond personally and provide a discount for anyone using the phrase "not as crazy as you think" in their inquiry. Thanks for listening to Not As Crazy As You Think, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And remember, mental health is attainable for anyone, especially those labeled with mental illness. Until next time, peace out.